this is how identity works, not through broad declarations, but through subconscious repetition, not through I am statements, but through how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Eventually, it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a personality trait. You go from, I didn't do this yet, to, I'm just not someone who finishes things. But here's something you may not have yet considered. What if your brain is just trying to protect you from disappointment or judgment or shame? And what if this whole pattern isn't laziness, but a kind of self protection? Avoidance is uncomfortable, but it's also familiar. Welcome to the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. I'm Amanda Doyle, certified life and leadership coach, here to help high-achieving women use practical mindset tools to live your complex life with more ease. Each week, you'll learn how to lead with more confidence at work, stay regulated and present in parenting, and actually enjoy the life that you've worked so hard to build. So pop in your earbuds and let's do some coaching. This episode started with a text from my friend Leanne. She wrote, "Please do an episode on overcoming fear of returns." And I knew exactly what she meant because we have all got one. The thing that sits just long enough to become part of the landscape. Maybe it's a stack of shirts that you panic bought when your confidence dipped, or shoes in the trunk that are a little too tight. Maybe it's still in the box, still taped shut, because that way you don't have to deal with it. It's the kind of task that shouldn't feel like a big deal, but for some reason it does. And even if returns aren't your thing, this episode isn't really just about returns. It's about your version of the return, the thing that's technically simple, but emotionally sticky, the thing you keep moving to tomorrow, not because it's hard, but because it stirs something up. For some of us, that looks like not scheduling the appointment. That is me. Not answering the text. Also me. Not opening the document, not checking the account. The action is small, but the avoidance, that's often where the real pattern lives. And that's where we can learn and grow. And what I found for myself and for my clients is that same emotion that keeps you from doing the little things is usually the same emotion that keeps you from doing the big things. So today we're not going to try to solve it, but we are going to look at it. We're going to get curious about the version of you who's leading in that moment when you're procrastinating and the version of you who might be ready to step in instead. Because how you handle the small things has a way of becoming how you move through everything else. So let's get into it. First things first, you're probably not avoiding the return because it's hard. You're avoiding it because it makes you feel something, and probably not something huge, just uncomfortable enough to push it to tomorrow. Again, returns live in that strange space, not urgent, not complicated, but somehow a little bit heavy. So they sit. You walk past the box or glance at the receipt, and something comes up. Maybe it's a little dread, or that little pang of shame, or just this vague sense of, ugh, I really should have done that already. Most of the time, I just move on, and the task stays stuck in the background category of, ugh, I should deal with that. But here's the thing. The feeling didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a thought in your brain, one of those quick automatic thoughts your brain throws out like a reflex. Something like, I never should have bought this. Makes you feel some little bit of shame. I've already let this sit too long. Maybe that's guilt. This isn't important enough to deal with today. Resignation. I'm not organized enough to keep up with this stuff. Self-doubt. I'll probably just mess it up. Anxiety. The one that shows up the most often for me is I should have done this already. It sounds like a responsible, harmless thought, but what it really does is flood my body with low-key shame. And the moment that happens, my brain goes to work. not on the task, but on avoiding the feeling. It took me a long while to learn that this is not laziness. This is just how brains try to help. There's actually a name for this, the intention action gap. It's the space between what you meant to do and what you actually do. It's rarely a planning issue, it's an emotional one. Your brain predicts that the task will feel bad, and it doesn't see any payoff. No dopamine hit, no visible reward, no applause, just effort and maybe a little regret. So it moves the task down the list. And this same pattern, the one that plays out over a pair of leggings or a shipping label, also shows up in places that matter more. Maybe your thought is like mine, I've let this go too long and now it's a whole thing, and that brings up guilt. And that same guilt might keep you from following up after a networking conversation or reaching out to someone you care about. Or maybe your thought is, if I try to deal with this, I'll probably mess it up. And that brings up anxiety. And that same anxiety might stop you from applying for the job, asking for feedback, or having a conversation that you've been circling around in your brain for months. It's not the actual task that's overwhelming, it's the emotion underneath it. And most of us run the same emotional loops over and over. So we avoid all kinds of things for the same few reasons. So this isn't really about overanalyzing your return. It's about seeing your specific pattern because the way you move through the small stuff often mirrors how you move through the big stuff, just with more at stake. So before we go deeper, take a second to name your version of a small thing and a big thing you're avoiding. What's the small thing? The one thing you keep meaning to do. The thing that's easy to justify avoiding because it's not urgent, but it lingers. And now think for a minute, what's a bigger thing? A bigger thing that feels more meaningful, but pulls up that same emotion of guilt or dread or pressure. Don't fix anything yet. Just name them for now. Because once you see the emotional pattern underneath both, you're no longer inside of it. You're outside of it, watching it. And now we can get to work. So if the return and everything like it isn't just a task, but an emotional pattern that you're reinforcing, then it's worth asking, what identity is this pattern reinforcing? And is that the version of you that you want to keep practicing? By the time the return has been sitting for 2 weeks, it's not about the item anymore. It's about what you're starting to believe it means. You're not just avoiding a task, you're reinforcing a specific story. Like, I'm behind. I can't keep up. I make things harder than they need to be. I'm not someone who finishes things. These are all subconscious beliefs. And over time, the story starts to feel less like a thought and more like a fact. This is how identity works, not through broad declarations, but through subconscious repetition, not through I am statements, but through how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Eventually, it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a personality trait. You go from I didn't do this yet to I'm just not someone who finishes things. But here's something you may not have yet considered. What if your brain is just trying to protect you from disappointment or judgment or shame? And what if this whole pattern isn't laziness, but a kind of self protection? Avoidance is uncomfortable, but it's also familiar. It's a way to buy time, to dodge the feeling you're afraid might come up if you face the thing head on. And this is what a lot of us miss. Procrastination isn't just an action, it isn't just a habit. It's often a moment of emotional discomfort that we don't know how to metabolize. So we push it to tomorrow. Your brain might be feeling shame and call it laziness. You might be feeling dread and call it disorganization. You might feel flooded and call it failure. But none of that is the truth. Those are just feelings your brain is trying to naturally avoid, and explanations it offers to make sense of the tension. So before we try to take action, here's the deeper work. Can you feel the emotion that's been driving the delay without fixing it, just naming it? Can you let yourself sit in the guilt or the shame or the dread without making it mean something about your worth? Because if you can be with the emotion, a natural human emotion, instead of escaping it, that's already a pattern interrupt. That's already a shift. Only then, when the emotion has been named and allowed, can you start to respond differently in a way that doesn't feel like pressure and grit and forcing it. Not to prove anything, just to stop repeating the part of the story that is not serving you. Once the emotion is named, you can say, this is guilt. This is shame. This is that foggy in the background kind of dread I always feel when I think I've messed up. Something in you gets a little quieter then. It's not fixed, it's not resolved, it's just less reactive. And from that quieter, more grounded place, you get to ask, okay, what version of me is leading right now? Who's at the wheel? Maybe it is the one who's always trying to catch up, the one who believes she's constantly a little behind, the one who thinks she has to earn a break, earn rest, earn relief. And here's the little shift. You don't have to fire her or be mad at her or silence her. She is doing her best, but she doesn't have to direct this particular scene anymore. There might be another part of you available, one that doesn't operate from guilt. Maybe she's steady or self respecting. Maybe she knows this return is just a return and that doing it now doesn't erase anything or prove anything. It just feels better. That's what a mindset shift really is. Not becoming someone new, just letting a different part of you step forward, someone with less panic in her eyes. And when that version of you makes the next move, even if it's just putting the return in the car or opening the file, it lands a little bit differently. It's not a performative action. It's not from pressure. It's more like a little act of self respect. And that is the shift you're practicing, not productivity, but agency. From this steadier place, come back to what you've been avoiding. What is the small thing? The one that keeps getting moved to tomorrow, not because it's hard, but because it brings up something uncomfortable. And what's the big thing you thought about earlier? The one that matters a little more, but stirs up that same emotional loop: shame, guilt, dread, the feeling of being just a little too late. It's probably the same emotion underneath both. And that's the pattern, not the tasks themselves, but the emotional posture they pull you into. So here is your invitation with the little thing and the big thing. What's one new belief that you want to start practicing about yourself, not about the tasks? Something that feels slightly more honest, more useful, and more self respecting. Something that could apply to both the big and little one. Something maybe like, I can follow through even when it's not urgent. I know how to finish things that matter to me. I'm allowed to move forward without catching up first. This last one is huge for my productivity. And what's the emotion that comes with that belief? Maybe it's not confidence, but maybe it's calm or steadiness or just like 1% more relief. Let yourself feel that feeling for a second. Let that feeling be what moves you forward. And then once you have that feeling, a little sense of that feeling, you take one small action. For the return, maybe you go find the label or check the date or put the box in your car. And for the big thing, maybe you open the file or you draft the line or you block time that feels doable and you stick to it. The tasks themselves don't need to change, but the energy you bring to them can. because when you stop relating to yourself like someone who's always behind, you open the door just a sliver to a different kind of identity, one that is already available. It's already you. It's just underneath unhelpful stories. You don't need a full reinvention, just a slightly different feeling. And that will lead to a slightly different move. Okay, so that's it for today. You name the small thing, you name the big thing, you felt what was underneath both. Amazing job. And maybe just for a moment, you tried on a new belief about how you could be inside all of it. So as you move through your week, notice all the small decisions. Notice the moments where the old pattern wants to take the lead and give yourself the option to respond differently, even a little. And if this episode made you realize how often you're operating from pressure or avoidance or just trying to get through the day, I have just made something for you. It's a new free training called How to Exit Survival Mode Without Burning Your Life Down. And it's designed to help you understand what survival mode looks like for a high achieving working mom, how it shows up in your thoughts and behaviors, and how to start stepping out of it with more clarity and capacity. You can get immediate access to it in the show notes. Again, it's not about fixing yourself. There is nothing to fix. It's about understanding your patterns and building the tools to respond differently on purpose without pressure. You are not behind. You're just practicing a new way of showing up. Thank you for being here, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. If this episode gave you a new perspective, please pass it on to a friend or leave a quick review. It helps so much. And if you're ready to go deeper, this is exactly the kind of work we do inside my coaching program. I offer weekly live coaching, access to my full self-coaching course, and daily motivation in an intimate community. You can learn more at choosebetterthoughts.com. Until next time, remember, you are already enough, and change gets to feel good. You've got this.